Hello everyone, in this video I want to give a quick guide to aspiring Virtuoso players on how to prepare for their first Temple of Febe challenge mode progression run. Let's skip the introduction and talk about gear. You should go to snowcross.com and make sure you have the same stats as they use. Especially crucial is the buff food that gives all stats. For Temple of Febe CM it is commonplace to take the variant that reduces damage taken by 10%. This is an important part to survive the final phase, as Virtuoso has no other source of damage reduction in its kit. As an aside, Ascended Armor, while having more damage than Exotic Armor, also reduces damage taken by an additional 2%, so I highly recommend getting Ascended Armor before you start progressing Temple of Febe. Infusions are not mandatory to run, but they help, as they are free damage you will not have to work for. Then you should familiarize yourself with the rotation. There's a helpful beginner's guide on Snowcross that teaches you the basics of the rotation. Learning the opener of the benchmark helps a ton as well. Overall, you should be able to play the build without thinking much about it. The exact rotation matters not nearly as much as your ability to have some intuition on how to push buttons in the middle of doing the mechanics. As Condi Virtuoso, your job is to do enough DPS to get the boss to 0% health before the enrage timer hits, all the while not failing mechanics that would give the boss stacks of empowerment. So being confident in your ability to do decent damage can go a long way in making your progression successful. Alright, now let's talk about gameplay. The golden rule is that the commander is in charge of your squad. If they explain a strategy they want you to follow, then you please follow their callouts. Nevertheless, I'm going to give you a short commentary of how I would play the first two phases. As DPS, this is not really difficult to execute. And while the precise order of the mechanics is quite long and complicated, the commander is going to call them all out for you. The important takeaway here is to be able to follow along when things are called out to you. The first mechanic that happens when the fight starts is the green mechanic. Green circles need 5 players in them. You are 10 players stacked, so you automatically solve this first green. The first actual mechanic you'll have to deal with is the Malice, and you take the Mesmer Portal after this green circle if you have a Malice and your screen turns blue. After taking the portal, stand still to place the Malice where the portal exit was. If you don't have the Malice, you want to step back here, and when this ball above your head drops, you want to dodge forward to evade the damage. After that, there's a wall where you step left, and during all of that, you just continue doing as much damage as you can. It's crucial to try to continue the rotation as much as possible. After this, there's another Malice opportunity. If you have the Malice, you take the portal and stand still, then take it back. If you don't have the Malice, you simply again fan out to the back while facing the boss so you can keep attacking, and then dodge forward when the ball drops. Ideally, you don't take damage from these drops. This is important to learn for a later phase. In the early phases, you could also handle it by just pressing Distortion. Next up, you take a Scourge Portal out of the Rage, then take it back. And now you want to position towards the heart marker to be safe from the next mechanic. But since we already phased to 80%, we just had to break the bar. When you meet the CC bar, you always want to use your F3 with 5 blades for 250 CC, and then either use your Sword 4 or your Focus 4 to do another 200 or 150 CC respectively. In the split phase, you kill the Embodiment of Regret, disable its empowered mechanic, then return back to the boss and do another golem opener. Here there's another green circle first, which is followed up by a Scourge Portal that we take backwards. And then you have the puddles, and again you could dodge roll this, but here I decide to press my Distort instead to avoid having to dodge, because it's simply didn't have that much space here, and Distort keeps you 100% safe as well. Next up, you simply want to run around the boss, and now during this collection phase, make sure that you intercept the orbs before they hit the boss. But that it's important that you don't stand fully inside the hitbox, or else the boss will absorb the orbs and gain some barrier and some stacks of empowerment. Make sure that you follow your subgroup during the collection. At least that's what you do in the most common strategy. Here I have a Malice, my screen turned blue, and I took the portal to place the Malice wherever the portal led me to. After that, we kill these Malices. And in order to kill them, simply stand behind them as a Virtuoso. All your attacks will pierce, especially your dagger skills, dagger 1 and dagger 2, and also your blade songs. And then there's these double drops, and again, here you want to wait for the ball to drop and dodge roll perfectly so you evade the damage from that. After that, you move to the right, and you will follow the wall, wait on hard for the next wall to spawn, and then jump over this wall to keep your boons. In case you fail this jump, you will simply get boon corrupted. It's not the end of the world. Since the boss is now approaching 50%, I already keep my F3 ready to be able to CC as soon as possible, which I'm going to do now. And that's already the first 2 phases. As you can see, as a DPS player, there's not a lot of challenging things to do, certainly not a lot of things that are actually threatening for your life. You could always distort the puddles if it makes you feel more comfortable, and the main idea is just that you're able to keep up the damage. So you never turn away from the boss, you always face the boss, you always keep doing this rotation. It doesn't matter if it's not the cleanest in the world, what matters is really that you're able to keep up doing something, because doing something is already more than enough to make the DPS check in the end. The reason some people struggle with the DPS check is that their character turns away from the boss, or they completely forget that they have to press skills still. For example, I never let up on the blade song pressing, always with 5 blades. This gives me great damage already. Final thing I want to discuss is how to handle the despair puddles in the 3rd phase, because they are markedly different than from the 1st phase. In the first 2 phases, you can just press distort and you're completely immune against the puddles. In the 3rd phase, the distort or evading, for that matter, would only protect you from the initial impact of the ball dropping, but not from the ticking damage afterwards. That means if you distort and stand still, you just die. For this reason, the ideal strategy is as follows. You want to distort while the puddle is filling up, and as soon as the ball drops, you want to start moving. And since running alone is not enough to get out, unless you time it perfectly or even have super speed sometimes, you want to use a dodge roll as part of it. So here you can see in slow motion, I will distort before the circle fills up. Then I start walking, and as soon as I see the invulnerable text, I dodge roll in the desired direction. Because there's another puddle coming up, I will simply press Signet of Illusions now to get back my distort. Gather enough blades, then distort before the circle fills up. Puddle drops, and we dodge forward. And I always start with a few steps forward or with a few steps to the right, so I can make sure that my dodge roll goes in the correct direction afterwards as well. Now let's watch this again in slow motion. So what's important is that we stay at a far enough range so the heralds can be placed in front of us. We don't want to encroach on them, and the healers are behind us. There's just one big Virtuoso stack. We press distort. Make sure you press it early enough. Most common mistake is just to press it too late and still die. And then you start moving as soon as the ball drops. And middle of the movement, you use a dodge roll to gain further distance. Reset with Signet of Illusion, distort, ball drop, start walking forward, and dodge roll. And that's how you survive these puddles with 100% consistency. It's always better to be slightly too early than it is to be too late, because if you are too early, you will move your puddle a bit, but as long as it's only you, it's not actually killing anyone else. On the other hand, if you're too late, you will be inside 6 people's puddles and you will instantly die, and that is usually a wipe in progression runs. If for any reason at one point you do not have your distort ready, what you have to do is instead dodge as you've practiced it in phase 1 and phase 2. So you dodge a bit earlier to dodge the ball dropping. This is obviously not ideal. You always want to have your distort up, even if it means delaying your Signet of Illusions to have it available to reset the distort when needed. But in case it happens, it's still important to know that there's a way out for you simply by dodging slightly earlier. So that's already it. I will briefly summarize my main points in this video. Get the Virtuoso build that allows you to run Ascended all stats food with 10% damage reduction. Practice the rotation enough that you can focus on mechanics rather than looking at your skill bar. When playing the fight, follow the callouts by your commander. Try to stack wherever they are, collect orbs before they reach the boss, and save up your crowd control for the Defiance bars at 80%, 50% and 10%. When you encounter the big empowered despair paddles in the third phase of the fight, you want to use Distort before the circle has filled up. Then you start walking as soon as the ball above your head drops, followed by a dodge roll to make sure you get out of the circle in time. If you don't have Distort, you have to dodge the ball dropping instead, which means dodging ever so slightly earlier. Because this is less safe, you should aim to always have Distort available. The most important thing is to have fun though, and view this progression as an adventure that allows you to improve as a player, pull by pull, hour by hour. I hope this provided a helpful quick overview as a DPS player and prepared you sufficiently for your first progression run. Good luck and have a wonderful day.